As a children's hospital worker in Tennessee, Georgia Tan would lie to new mothers and tell them their babies died after childbirth, only to turn around and sell them to whomever was willing to pay top dollar, many of whom were pedophiles. She eventually became a millionaire thanks to this sick scheme, as it's estimated that she stole more than 5,000 babies over a 26-year span, one of which grew up to become professional wrestler Ric Flair. Unfortunately, Georgia passed away in 1950, just months before her awful crimes were uncovered. An embalmer from Texas was recently arrested after allegedly mutilating the corpse of a 58-year-old man she was embalming. After learning he was a registered sex offender for raping a woman in 2001, Amber Laudermilk used a scalpel to slice off the dead man's groin and then shoved it down his throat. She reportedly did this in front of her embalming student right after telling him, "You didn't see anything." Laudermilk has been charged with desecrating a corpse and is being held on a $5,000 bond. Morbid Facts, Part 307. When he was 38 years old, Jerry Seinfeld met a 17-year-old girl in Central Park and started dating her. He would pick her up from high school, and the relationship lasted 4 years despite a 21-year age gap. Not to mention there's an episode of Seinfeld where the guys stare at the cleavage of a 15-year-old girl and Jerry defends it as being normal. In 2010, a high school in Pennsylvania issued Apple MacBooks to each of its 2,300 students, then remotely activated the webcams to spy on them at home. Without telling its students or their parents, the school secretly took pictures of the children in their own home and monitored their chat logs and the websites they visited. The whole scandal was only uncovered when one student was eating Mike and Ike's in his bedroom and the school tried to bust him for taking pills. The district was eventually ordered to pay $600,000 in lawsuits filed against the school after it was found to be in possession of more than 50,000 webcam shots of the students. Uday Hussein, the son of Saddam, was named chairman of the Iraqi Olympic Committee in 1984. Athletes who disappointed him were subject to torture and imprisonment after the games. Kelvin Kiptum is the current world record holder for the men's marathon, but sadly passed away earlier this year after driving his car into a tree. If he hadn't been killed, he likely would have become the first person to run an official marathon in under 2 hours. Security guard Richard Jewell saved hundreds of lives by spotting a bomb and alerting police at the 1996 Olympics. He was later wrongly accused of the crime and spent months enduring media slander despite being a hero. The FBI thoroughly searched his home multiple times and maintained 24-hour surveillance of him before Eric Rudolph confessed to the crime. When he was a young boy, actor Terrence Howard witnessed his dad stab a man to death while they were waiting in line to take pictures with Santa Claus at a department store in what became known as the Santa line slaying. The victim, who was also with his family, reportedly made a racist comment to Terrence's father Tyrone after he thought he cut the line, which quickly escalated to a fatal fight. Tyrone was arrested and pleaded self-defense since the other man attacked first and was sentenced to 11 months in prison. After a deadly Peruvian avalanche in 1962, 2 American climbers traveled down to investigate and later warned Peruvian authorities that there is a threat of a much larger avalanche just waiting to happen. These warnings were not only ignored but actively suppressed by the Peruvian government, as the climbers were accused of fear-mongering and anyone who even mentioned their research was arrested. 8 years later, the deadliest avalanche in history occurred there, completely destroying the town of Yungay while killing over 30,000 people. Morbid Facts, Part 433. In 1981, 3 young men found the murdered body of a woman laying in a roadside ditch in Ohio. She was known as the Buckskin Girl because of the poncho she'd been wearing, but police struggled to identify her for decades. That was until 37 years later in 2018 when DNA analysis identified her as hitchhiker Marcia King. Her mother had still been living in the same house with the same phone number, never giving up hope that her daughter may return home one day. Marcia's murder remains unsolved, but the case is still open. In a form of doping known as boosting, wheelchair athletes with spinal injuries will sometimes intentionally injure themselves below the waist to cause their bodies to respond by raising blood pressure, thus enhancing their performance. Techniques include clamping down on a catheter to overfill the bladder, breaking toe bones, and administering electric shocks to the legs, feet, and testicles. Boosting has been completely banned by the International Paralympic Committee since 1994. Morbid Facts, Part 5. In 2009, actor Dean Winters suffered a bacterial infection and died in the ambulance but was revived. After recovering, he developed gangrene and had multiple amputations and skin grafts. He's now better known for playing Mayhem in Allstate insurance commercials. When Pablo Escobar's daughter wanted a unicorn for her birthday, he bought her a horse and stapled a cone to its head and wings to its back. The horse died within a week due to severe infections. The reason you wake up right before you're about to die in a dream is because your brain doesn't know what it's actually like to experience death. Dutchman Richard Kinklamer's wife mysteriously disappeared in 1991. The next year, he wrote a book on 7 ways to kill your spouse. A few years later, the new owners of his former home found his wife's skeletal remains. He was later sentenced to 7 years in prison for his wife's murder, but was released 5 years early for good behavior. Stormy Jones suffered from a rare genetic condition where her liver was unable to remove cholesterol, raising her cholesterol to 7 times the normal level for her age and resulting in 2 heart attacks before she turned 6. In 1984, she became the world's first successful recipient of a simultaneous heart and liver transplant. Her life was miraculously extended by another 7 years, but she tragically passed away in 1990 at the age of 13. Taylor Mitchell was a 19-year-old folk musician from Canada who was attacked and killed by 2 coyotes during a hike in 2009. She is currently the only documented adult to have been killed by coyotes. After President John Adams' daughter Abigail was diagnosed with breast cancer, she had a mastectomy performed on her with a fork, wooden razor, and a spatula. Without anesthesia, the breast was fully removed, only to reveal that the cancer had spread to her lymph nodes. So the doctors had to slice out those tumors as well. To stop the bleeding, the wound was cauterized using the heated spatula, and the entire surgery only took about 25 minutes. Everyone was amazed that she never cried out in pain during the brutal operation, but she tragically died from the same cancer just 2 years later. Morbid Facts, Part 288. When a predatory producer assaulted one of her friends, Carrie Fisher sent him a Tiffany box with a severed cow tongue inside. She also left a note inside that read, "The next delivery will be something of yours in a much smaller box." 2013, a 60-year-old Japanese truck driver found out he was accidentally switched at birth in a Tokyo hospital in 1953. His biological parents were very wealthy, and the infant who took his place grew up to own a successful real estate company. Meanwhile, the original son was raised by a poor single mother and struggled with poverty throughout his entire life. Morbid Facts, Part 8. This photo from 1904 shows a rubber worker from the Belgian Congo staring at the severed hands and feet of his 5-year-old daughter. She was brutally murdered because he failed to meet his quota for the day. When Japan executes criminals by hanging, 3 different buttons on the wall are pressed by 3 different people at the same time. This is so that none of them know who actually did the killing, since only one button is randomly programmed to open the trap door. In 2008, a Brazilian priest strapped 1,000 balloons onto a lawn chair and rode it into the sky as part of a fundraiser. He was able to reach an altitude of 20,000 feet before losing contact with authorities. Over a month later, the lower half of his body was found floating near an oil rig. In 1958, North Carolina, a white girl told her parents that she kissed 2 black boys aged 7 and 9 on the cheeks. The girl's father then arranged a mob to the boys' homes where they threatened to lynch them and their parents. Soon enough, police showed up and proceeded to arrest and severely beat the young boys themselves. Charged with rape, they were confined for 6 days without being able to contact their parents. The boys spent 4 months in prison before finally being pardoned by the governor. It's infamously known as the kissing case of 1958. In 2012, tragedy struck when 30-year-old newlywed Maria Pantazopoulos was having some trash the dress photos taken in Montreal while wearing her wedding dress. She was only standing in about a foot of water on a river when her gown became waterlogged, quickly pulling her deeper and deeper underwater as her dress suddenly weighed up to 100 pounds. The photographer did everything he could to save her before Maria cried out, "I can't anymore, it's too heavy," and then she let go. Her body was recovered by a scuba diver 2 hours later. In 2008, a college student from Belgium decided to heat up some leftover spaghetti that had been sitting out on the kitchen counter for 5 days. He told his parents that it tasted strange, but figured it was the new tomato sauce that he added to the pasta. After eating the entire bowl, he headed out to play some soccer but had to return home 30 minutes later while suffering from severe abdominal pains, headaches, and nausea. He then vomited for several hours before finally managing to fall asleep, but he never woke up. The man's lifeless body was discovered the next morning after he died from an extreme form of food poisoning known as Bacillus cereus, aka fried rice syndrome. Morbid Facts, Part 305. In 1996, 14-year-old Barry Lukaitis opened fire on his high school algebra class in Washington State, killing 2 fellow students and the teacher. As his classmates were panicking, Barry was quoted saying, "This sure beats the hell out of algebra, doesn't it?" He's currently serving out a 189-year prison sentence for the murders. In 1982, 28-year-old fencing legend Vladimir Smirnov was killed at the World Fencing Championship when a broken foil pierced his mask, entered his eye socket, and penetrated his brain. The incident is why fencing uniforms now require Kevlar as a standard. In 2017, a 13-year-old boy died after his classmate threw a piece of cheese at him. The boy suffered from multiple severe allergies, including dairy, and was sent into anaphylactic shock soon after the cheese made contact with his neck. The classmate told authorities that he was only playing around and didn't realize that the boy suffered from a severe allergy. Here are some morbid facts about Ozzy Osbourne. In 1982, while wearing his wife Sharon's dress for a photo shoot near the Texas Alamo, Ozzy drunkenly urinated on a memorial erected for those who died in the famous battle. Ozzy was arrested and ended up being banned from the city of San Antonio for a decade. During a concert in January of 1982, Ozzy bit the head off of a bat that was thrown on stage. Ozzy claims he thought it was rubber, but it was actually a real bat that forced him to be treated for rabies. During a horrible drug binge, Ozzy reportedly shot all 17 of his cats with a shotgun and sat under his piano holding a knife until Sharon got home. Ozzy later said he was an absolute wreck at the time and described the event as the final straw of his drug abuse. While on tour with Motley Crue in 1984, Ozzy asked Nikki Sixx for a line of cocaine. Upon being told there was none left, Ozzy grabbed a straw and snorted some ants off the ground. Nikki later confessed, "From that moment on, we knew there was always someone who was sicker and more disgusting than we were." In 2022, James Grimes won an air guitar competition while on a cruise to Mexico, which was the last thing he remembered before waking up overboard in the Gulf of America without a single ship in sight. Grimes had to tread water for over 18 hours and endure countless stings from 2 swarms of jellyfish before he was finally rescued by the Coast Guard. 17-year-old Lisa Noland planned to take her own life just before she was abducted by serial killer Bobby Joe Long. He raped her several times and held her hostage for 26 hours until she managed to convince him to let her go. Lisa got the man captured, while the traumatic experience gave her a new lease on life and inspired her to become a police officer. After brutally murdering his ex-girlfriend's parents with a baseball bat in 2001, just last week, South Carolina man Brad Sigmund was executed via firing squad, the first such execution in the United States since 2010. Sigmund was given a choice and opted for firing squad over the other state-approved methods of lethal injection and the electric chair, since he said it was much quicker than the other methods, which have inflicted prolonged and potentially torturous deaths on his friends. Sigmund was strapped to a metal chair with a hood over his head and a target placed over his heart, while 3 volunteer officers fired at him from 15 feet away. After 8 people were tragically crushed to death during Travis Scott's performance at the Astroworld Music Festival, the rapper's former manager Shane Morris called him out for being an awful person. He claimed he wasn't surprised by the tragedy at all, since Scott once left him for dead while he was having a potentially deadly seizure in an LA studio. Morris was quoted saying, "When he sees people in harm or danger, he tends to continue only thinking about himself. And to make it worse, he's been doing this for years at other concerts." In 2015, Devin Staples, an actor who used to play Gaston at Disney World Orlando, died instantly while attempting to launch a firework off his head during a 4th of July party. On July 4th, 1826, President John Adams' last words before dying were, "Thomas Jefferson survives." Little did he know, the 3rd president had died just hours earlier that same day. Not to mention, they both died exactly 50 years after the Declaration of Independence was passed. Morbid Facts, Part 4. When a group of loggers were cutting off the top of a chestnut oak tree in 1980, they found the mummified remains of a hunting dog. Experts believe that it chased its prey up the tree in the 1960s, only to get stuck there and eventually die. He was posthumously named Stucky. This endangered baby dolphin in Argentina died shortly after this photo was taken because beachgoers were passing it around for selfies. If you hit someone with your car in China, you have to pay for their medical care. But if you kill someone with your car in China, you only have to pay a one-time fine. For this reason, many Chinese drivers have gone back to kill the person they hit. Refrigerator doors are only magnetic because children used to die inside of them. Before the Refrigerator Safety Act of 1956, the doors could only be opened by pulling the handle on the outside, which resulted in the deaths of many children who found abandoned refrigerators and got trapped inside of them while playing hide and seek before eventually suffocating. Just last year, a 23-year-old man died from a catastrophic spinal injury while playing at a Topgolf with some friends. In what was described as a prank gone wrong, his drunken friends had pushed him off the platform, causing him to miss the safety netting and fall 12 feet directly onto his head. In 1990, a flight heading from Medellin, Colombia to New York City crashed onto a hillside after running out of fuel, killing nearly half of the passengers on board. While being treated for serious injuries, 2 of the male passengers were arrested when ER doctors found baggies of cocaine that they'd swallowed and attempted to smuggle. Both men were sentenced to 6 years to life in prison. The British Pet Massacre was a week-long event in 1939 during which an estimated 400,000 cats and dogs, 1/4 of England's pet population, were killed out of fear of them eventually being gassed or left behind during an evacuation. Almost immediately afterwards, the event was recognized as completely unnecessary, stemming from social panic from the impending war and people seeking a way to feel like they were contributing to the war effort. None of the fears that led to the massacre actually ended up materializing. Morbid Facts, Part 278. In 2013, American sniper Chris Kyle and his friend Chad Littlefield were tragically shot dead at a Texas shooting range by Eddie Ray Routh, a schizophrenic Iraq War veteran suffering from severe PTSD. After agreeing to become the young vet's mentor, Chris decided to take him to a local gun range in their first meeting together. But during the drive there, Chris apparently realized that Routh was far more unstable than he signed up for, texting his buddy, "This dude is straight up nuts." Moments after pulling into the range, Routh grabbed 2 pistols and fired a barrage of bullets into both men, killing them instantly. Routh was found guilty of the murders and sentenced to life in prison. In 1948, George McLaurin became the first black man admitted to the University of Oklahoma, but was forced to either sit outside the classroom or in the corner away from the white students. He was quoted saying, "Colleges looked at me like I was an animal." His name still remains on the honor list as one of the top 3 students in the university. Morbid Facts, Part 174. When Pablo Picasso died in 1973, his wife wouldn't allow their grandson Pablito attend the funeral. Little Pablito responded by drinking a bottle of bleach, which damaged his organs so badly that he couldn't eat anymore. After 3 months of suffering, he died. Lake Nyos in Cameroon periodically releases a cloud of invisible carbon dioxide that suffocates everything within a 16-mile radius. In 1986, 1,700 people and all of their livestock suddenly died without even understanding what was happening to them. In 1949, Timothy Evans was wrongly executed for murdering his wife and daughter. The actual murderer, John Christie, was a prosecution witness at Evans's trial. After Evans was executed, Christie went on to kill 4 more people. The government didn't acknowledge that Evans was innocent until 2004. Just 2 days after his 18th birthday, star football player Warrick Dunn lost his police officer mother in a fatal shooting while she was off duty. But despite this, Dunn raised his 5 siblings while in college and was selected as the 12th overall pick in the NFL draft. He's since funded and built over 150 homes for single mothers, using his wealth to improve their lives. In 2008, suspected serial killer Ricky Simmons was found dead of heat stroke in the trunk of his ex-girlfriend's car. Investigators believe Simmons was waiting in the trunk to ambush and murder his ex-girlfriend when he became locked in the vehicle. A few years after receiving a bone marrow transplant to treat his leukemia in 2019, Nevada man Chris Long discovered that the DNA in his blood and semen had been completely replaced by that of his donor. Long had essentially become a chimera, a person with 2 different sets of DNA. He was quoted saying, "I thought it was pretty incredible that I can just disappear and someone else can appear." Experts say this was an extremely rare case, but one that raises serious questions about forensic evidence at crime scenes. Morbid Facts, Part 362. South Korean actor Jo Son is known for playing Random Task in the first Austin Powers movie. But in 2008, he was sentenced to 7 years in prison for torturing and essaying a female victim on Christmas Day. 3 years later, 27 years were added onto his sentence after he murdered his cellmate. 1916, a Tennessee circus elephant named Mary murdered her handler by crushing his head on his second day of the job. The circus owner then decided to publicly execute the 6,000-pound elephant by hanging her from a crane. After she was killed in front of a crowd of 2,500 men, women, and children, an autopsy revealed that she had a severely infected tooth that was likely the cause of her murderous